I just want to say that all of this is in process. We're not, I've been working on this for about maybe less than a year, which is normal for an opera, but in this short presentation, I'll show you some images of my designs that are based on early medieval period as well as historical accounts of Thomas Becket's life. The opera is about Thomas Becket. Murder in the Cathedral is composed by Ildebrando Pizzetti and is based on the Italian translation of T.S. Eliot's play by the same name. It tells the story of Archbishop Thomas Becket, his last day, and also his brutal murder in 1170, and I suppose I just gave away the ending. These are various representations on Becket found in art through the centuries that I used as a key inspiration for my designs. Our production at San Diego Opera will be the West Coast premiere and will be directed by the artistic director, Ian Campbell, and the great basso Ferruccio Furlanetto will be singing the lead role. I'll tell you a little bit, a brief story, the brief story about the opera. Thomas Becket, at the beginning, he's been exiled for 7 years in France and is now returning to England. His exile was prompted by bitter dispute with his former friend, Henry II of England. At the beginning of the opera, the women of Canterbury, who are the chorus of the opera, lament, and they fear for Becket. They tell Becket to not come back. The women, they're commoners, they're peasants, and they wear the appropriate headwear and clothing of the period. When Thomas appears in the cathedral, he's in his traveling clothes, and he goes along with John of Salisbury, who is his secretary at the time. And this is when, Becket says, no, I'm staying. This is my duty. I'm the archbishop. But he already knows the outcome, that he's surrounded by a lot of enemies. Here, this is very interesting. The center image is actually a garment from 12th century that we are replicating. And it is said that it was worn by Thomas Becket. It's currently in France, in the Cathedral of Sens. And I was very excited to find this surviving garment. These couple of sketches are basically visions that Becket imagines. These are tempters, similar to the tempters that come to Christ before he's killed. And so even though they're imaginary, I still wanted to set them in the period. The fourth tempter is really interesting because we decided to make him look exactly like Becket. And it just represents, Becket's personal turmoil. It's like talking to himself in a mirror. Moving on, Becket, this is a little bit later here. Yes, he gives a sermon on Christmas Mass. This is another surviving garment called the chasuble on the left over there that we're also replicating. So we're very interested in keeping with the period, keeping with the historical facts, and replicating a lot of these pieces. I believe in the next slide, I have even more pieces. We have the alp, chasuble, maniple, the apparel, and this was a history lesson to me as well as a lesson on religious vestment. I've become the expert of this over this past year. But it's really exciting because we have these surviving garments from 800 years ago, and fabric disintegrates, so it's amazing that I was able to look at some of these garments. These are images of the knights that come to the cathedral. They're servants of the king. It was never proven that the king actually ordered the knights to go and murder Becket. This is still a question, but basically they come to the cathedral, they threaten Becket. At some point we see them actually at a tavern. Getting drunk and, putting their swords and helmets and gauntlets, and then they go back. While we see all of this happening on stage, the knights getting ready to murder Becket, we see Becket actually putting on this amazing piece of garment called the cope. It's probably my most expensive piece in the opera. The fabric itself is like $120 a yard. It comes straight from Italy, and that's the cheap version. So this look itself probably would cost us about $3,000 without labor, considering the labor. On the right, we have the shoes and the mitre that supposedly belong to Becket. We're replicating those. We use a shoemaker in Nova Scotia to do the shoes. We have the millinery shop at the opera making the mitre illustrator, and we have a local painter actually painting all of the patterns on the mitre hat. The monks are part of the chorus. In opera, we have big choruses. So I have 30 monks, 30 women, and 20 children, so about 80 people chorus. So that's a lot of fitting time. I'm barely standing right now because we're in the middle of fittings of all these people. So I have to touch everything, see everything, examine everything. What's really interesting in the story, the priests and the chorus try to defend Beckett. First of all, they tell them, don't be here, you'll be murdered. But Beckett is very strong-minded. He puts, God in himself before, he puts God before everything, and so he knows that he'll be killed. And the actual killing is actually very gruesome. They cut his scalp and, get his brains out, and it's very gruesome. And I had to read all of that. I had to research all of that. And of course, we're not going to be showing all of that on stage because it's theater. You'll feel it in the music. You will feel it in the music because the music here is what's the leading factor. If you're interested in seeing this opera, I actually strongly recommend that you read the play by T.S. Eliot. Familiarize yourself with the opera, and then I think everything will make even more sense when you come to the opera. These are renditions of the actual murder at the end. And on a last thought, I just want to mention that the opera should not be viewed as a history lesson on the death of Thomas Becket, even though it was a history lesson personally for me. To me, it presents an examination of power and fate in a poetic, musical, and dramatic way. And I could only hope that my costumes support that vision. And I really hope to see all of you at the opera. It's downtown, it's nearby, you have no excuses.